Wesley is 41, and he manages projects for a mid-sized construction firm, which means he spends all week keeping other people's schedules from slipping. Right now, he's standing in a fluorescent lit hallway on the second floor of a storage facility just off the interstate, holding his phone, running the kind of numbers you can put off for years. Unit 214, climate-controlled, 10 by 10. It was supposed to be a 6-month unit, a bridge between the old place and the new one. Back when the move happened faster than the packing did. 6 months turned into a year, and after that nobody was really counting anymore. He's added it up now, standing there under the hum of the lights. And this is the part he couldn't put back down. For what he has paid to store that couch, that dining set, that television that was already a generation behind when they taped the box shut, he could walk into a store this afternoon and buy all of it again, new, and still have money left in his pocket. Nobody stole anything from Wesley. Nothing flooded, nothing burned. He paid, on time, every single month for 3 years, to keep things he never used and could have replaced for less. His wife asked him last spring what was even in there anymore. He couldn't remember all of it. Honestly, neither could she. Standing in that hallway, he already knew he didn't want most of what was behind that door. Keep Wesley in mind. We'll come back to him, because what happened to him is happening, right now, to millions of people, and almost none of them are standing in the hallway yet. So before we go one more step, I want to say something to you directly, especially if there's a small, familiar tightening somewhere in your chest as I describe this. Because maybe you have a unit too, or you did, or someone you love does. I'm not here to tell you you're bad with money. I mean that. I've watched people I genuinely admire, careful people, the kind who read the fine print on everything else, pay a storage bill for years without blinking. This isn't a willpower thing, and it certainly isn't about being careless. The whole arrangement is built to feel reasonable every month you glance at it, which is exactly how years slip past before anyone really looks. What I actually want to show you tonight is quieter and stranger than "you're wasting money." You are not paying for space. You're paying to put off a decision. Every month, that small automatic charge buys you one more month of not having to choose what stays and what goes. And a storage unit might be the only product I can think of that takes a one-time decision, keep it or let it go, and turns it into a bill with no end date. Stay with me, because once you see the shape of it, you can't really unsee it. And I think by the end you'll look at that little line on your statement a bit differently, with less guilt in it, and a lot more clarity. Let me tell you about Gloria. Gloria is 58, a nurse who just retired after 30-odd years on her feet. 2 years ago, she did the responsible thing, the thing the magazines applaud. She sold the big house after the kids were gone, downsized to something sensible, and pocketed the difference. But a house that raised 3 children does not fit into a smaller house, and she wasn't ready, not that month, not with everything else going on, to stand in the driveway and decide which parts of 20 years were coming and which were not. So she did the calm, adult, temporary thing. She rented a unit and put the overflow inside. The good dining table, the kids' boxes, the guest bed nobody sleeps in. Just until things settle, she told her sister. Look at what that actually costs, and sit for a second with how small it looks. A standard 10 by 10 unit runs around $119 a month right now. That's Sparefoot's number for the last quarter of 2025. Climate controlled, like Gloria's, closer to $134. Call it somewhere north of $100 a month for the privilege of not deciding. And if something in you just tensed a little, the small, defensive thought that says, "Mine's different. Mine's only for now," hold on to that feeling. We're going to come back to it. $119. That's the whole trick of it. It's too small to trip any alarm. It's less than a phone bill. It slides past on the statement, right between the streaming services and the car insurance, and your eye never once snags on it. And just until things settle, that little phrase is doing an enormous amount of work. Because look what happens to temporary. The industry's own surveys put the average stay somewhere between 14 and 20 months, depending whose data you read. Not 6, more than a year, either way. Nearly half of renters, about 49%, hang on longer than a year, and roughly a quarter keep paying past 2. Temporary is a word you say to yourself, never to the storage company. Nobody there has to correct it. You renew it on your own. Every month the charge clears without a fight. Gloria's unit is now in its 4th year. Now, you might be thinking the obvious thing. I can almost hear it. Just go clean it out, Gloria. Take a weekend, rent a truck, be done. If it were that easy, none of us would be here. So stay with me on why it isn't. Because it has almost nothing to do with being lazy. 2 things are working on Gloria at the same time. The same 2 things that work on all of us. And once you've watched them up close, you start catching yourself in the act. Start with the dining table. To anyone else, it's a used table. To Gloria, it's the one 3 kids did their homework at. And the second a thing is hers like that, letting it go stops feeling like a trade and starts feeling like losing something. There's a name for it. Economists call it the endowment effect, and the St. Louis Fed laid it out plainly back in 2022. The moment something belongs to you, you value it far above anything you'd actually pay to get it. That one word, hers, is worth about $1,600 a year to the storage company. The other pull is the one that keeps the door shut. Every month Gloria pays, the money she's already sunk in there gets a little taller, and the taller it gets, the crazier it feels to waste all of it by walking away now. So she pays again, to protect money she can't get back. That's the sunk cost trap. The wrinkle most people miss. A 2020 study on loss aversion found the grip is strongest exactly when what you've sunk is money. Tighter than sunk time, tighter than sunk effort. Which makes a storage unit almost perfectly built to catch a person. Read that back slowly, because that's the loop she's caught in. The more Gloria pays, the harder it gets for Gloria to stop paying. And this is not some fringe habit. The share of American households renting storage has been climbing hard, from about 11% in 2022 to roughly 13% by 2024, the biggest jump the Self-Storage Association has ever recorded between 2 of its own surveys. Widen the lens and it's bigger still. About 1 in 3 Americans rent storage of some kind now, and the heaviest users skew older. Gen X and Boomers, people right around Gloria's age, with a whole house of history behind them. This is a $45 billion industry in the United States. It did not get that big by helping people let go. It's not only people carrying grief and a family home. Sometimes it's simpler than that, and honestly more absurd. Then there's Nolan, 34, writes software from a laptop at his kitchen table. He moved into a smaller apartment to save money, good instinct, and put the just-in-case pile into a 10 by 10. Old gym weights and boxes from college, and a spare armchair for some future apartment that might have room for a second one. 3 years in, he has opened that door exactly twice. Do the piece of math nobody wants to do. Total paid, divided by the number of times he's actually walked in and taken something out. And each visit to that unit has cost him more than $2,000. The furniture is almost beside the point. What he's really buying, month after month, is the right to keep telling himself he hasn't decided yet. At $134 a pop. And the uncomfortable part, you might already feel it coming, is that this one's for you, this week, not someday. If there's a unit on your statement right now, you already have a number like Nolan's. You've just never done the division. Now, remember Wesley, back in that hallway? Here's what finally tipped him. His wife needed something out of the unit, after all that time, so he drove over and rolled up the door, and the smell hit him first. That particular cardboard and sealed air smell of a room that's been shut too long. He stood there looking at a couch he'd stopped picturing in any real living room, and the thought arrived whole. I have paid more to keep this than it would cost to buy it new. Nothing had been taken from him. It just slipped away, a little at a time, across 3 years of not wanting to spend one hard afternoon deciding. That's the part I keep coming back to. Wesley could afford the storage bill. What he couldn't afford, for 3 years, was the afternoon. So let me tell you what Gloria actually did, because she's the reason I wanted to make this in the first place. If part of you just braced for the checklist, the 5-step plan you'll feel a little guilty for not doing, you can relax. I'd rather just show you a person doing it. Gloria didn't rent a truck first. She did something smaller. She opened her calendar and put a real date on it, 90 days out, and next to it she wrote one sentence. On this day, it's decided. Not clean out the unit. Decided. Either the things come home, or they go. No automatic renewal. She gave the decision a deadline, the way every other real decision in her life had one. Then she drove over, not to empty it, just to look. And she did something that sounds trivial, and isn't. She took out her phone and photographed everything, corner to corner. Then she gave herself a private rule. If 90 days went by and she never once needed to open a single one of those photos, that was her answer. Turns out you don't miss what you have to be reminded you own. When the date came, she made herself do one honest comparison. On one side, what this unit will cost me over the next 12 months. On the other, what it would cost to replace the few things in here I'd want back. It wasn't close. The rent won, the way it almost always does, because the stuff was worth less than the waiting. And that was the whole thing she'd been avoiding. Not the $134 a month, which was always small enough to ignore, but the bigger question sitting underneath it. What a whole house of belongings was genuinely worth keeping, with tens of thousands of dollars riding on the answer. The monthly charge was just how she kept from having to decide. So she kept the handful of things that truly mattered. The photographs, 2 of her mother's, 1 box for each kid, and she let the rest go. Sold some, gave away more. And then the part I love most. The part that turns this from a sad story into a useful one. She went home and set up an automatic transfer for the exact amount of that old storage bill, $134, into a separate account. Same money, same day of the month, just pointed somewhere it could finally add up. Because that $134 was costing her something on the other side of the ledger too. That unit ran her about $1,600 a year, $134 a month, 12 months a year. Take that same $1,600 and put it to work at a normal long-run return. Call it 8%, and in 20 years it grows to around $74,000. Give it 30, and it's closer to $180,000. Picture the version of you at 65 for a second, sitting down to look at what's actually in the retirement account, and finding that number simply not there. That's who ends up paying the storage bill. The you 3 decades from now, the one who never got to meet that money. None of that is meant to make your stomach drop. The furniture was always the small cost here anyway. The couch, the table, cheap, next to what that money could have become. The real expense never showed up on any statement. It just failed to appear in a retirement account. One skipped $1,600 deposit at a time. There's one more thing I have to tell you, because it's the detail that made me realize this was never really a money story. Sparefoot ran a survey this year and found that about 1 in 3 storage renters are actively hiding what's in their unit from someone close to them, a spouse, a parent, their kids. Sit with what that means. People aren't hiding the spending. They're hiding a decision they still can't bring themselves to make. The unit has become the place we set down the things we can't look at and can't release, and then we lock the door on the guilt and pay every month to keep it shut. Meanwhile, the company on the other side of that lock isn't on your side of it. The business runs on steady auto-pay renters and regular rate increases, and it treats the rest as ordinary cost of doing business. High turnover is something its own analysts file under weakness, not strategy. And when the payments finally stop, roughly 155,000 units a year get auctioned off, the contents sold, often for a few $100s. Everything a person couldn't bring themselves to sort, sorted for them, by a stranger, for the price of a nice dinner. So if it were me, sitting where you might be sitting right now, I don't think I'd rush out tonight. I wouldn't rent a truck or make any big vow. I'd do one small thing this week instead. Pull up the statement, find that charge, and try to write down, from memory, before I ever drove over, everything that unit is protecting. Just the list. Not to cancel anything tonight, just to see it on paper. Because if I can't fill the page, if I can't quite picture what's in there, some part of me has already let it go. I'm just still paying the bill on it. Gloria sent me a photo the day she closed the unit. Not of the empty room, of her rearview mirror, pulling out of the lot, the roll-up door coming down behind her for the last time. She told me the strange part was how little she thought about any of it afterward. She'd braced herself to grieve the letting go, and mostly what she felt was her shoulders come down from around her ears. All those years of just until things settle, and once it was gone, she couldn't have told you half of what she'd kept. That's really all I wanted you to see tonight.